Hello there, welcome to David's Investment Analysis channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a very interesting business, a business that is very familiar to many individuals. We saw their stock price went up 16% this past trading day, where the competitor traded down 16%. It's one of the largest semiconductor companies in the world, and their chips are almost everywhere, from PC, desktop, to laptops, to data centers, to gaming consoles. And that is AMD. In the next bit, I'll be discussing about AMD, what they do, and how they earn income. Then I'll look at the company's qualitative aspects of their business, followed by a quantitative analysis looking at the valuation and financials. Then I'll conclude on whether I think the stock is a buy at its current price and whether I own any shares of the business myself. I do spend a lot of time preparing for these videos, so I really appreciate if you like and share my video. And if you do not want to miss out on any future video, please do subscribe and click the bell notification. And if there's any other companies you'd like me to cover in the future, please leave it in the comments below. Now let's get to it. AMD operates a semiconductor company worldwide. The company operates two segments, computing and graphics, and enterprise embedded and semi-custom. Its products include x86 microprocessors as an accelerated processing unit, chipsets, discrete and integrated graphics processing units, data center and professional GPUs, and development services, and server and embedded processors, and semi-custom system-on-chip products, development services, and technology for game consoles. The company provides x86 microprocessors for desktop PCs under AMD Ryzen, AMD Ryzen Pro, Ryzen, Threadripper, AMD A-Series, AMD FX, AMD Athlon, AMD Athlon Pro, and AMD Pro A-Series processing brands. It also offers discrete GPUs for desktop and notebook PCs under the AMD Radeon Graphics and AMD Embedded Radeon brands. In addition, the company provides embedded processor solutions for data centers, cloud computing and processing, cloud gaming, interactive digital signage, and medical imaging under the AMD Ryzen, AMD EPYC, AMD Radeon Instinct, and customer-specific solutions based on AMD CPU, GPU, and multimedia technologies, and as well as semi-custom system-on-chip products. It serves original equipment and design manufacturers, data centers, original design manufacturers, system integrators, independent distributors, online retailers, and add-in board manufacturers through its direct sales force, independent distributors, and sales representatives. In simpler terms, the company makes computing and graphics processing chips for several different uses, from computers to data centers to special custom uses like game consoles and digital imaging. AMD's vision is high-performance computing is transforming our lives, and its mission is to build great products that accelerate next-generation computing experiences. The company was founded in 1969 and is headquartered in Santa Clara, California, with over 12,000 employees in 46 locations across 22 countries. Now let's look at some of the qualitative factors, and we'll first look at the management team. Dr. Lisa T. Su is the President and Chief Executive Officer of AMD, a position that she's held since October 2014, and serves on the AMD Board of Directors. Previously, from July 2014 to October 2014, she was the Chief Operating Officer responsible for integrating AMD's business units, sales, global operations, and infrastructure enablement teams into a single market-facing organization responsible for all aspects of the product strategy and execution. Dr. Su joined AMD in January 2012 as a Senior Vice President and General Manager, Global Business Units, and was responsible for driving end-to-end business execution of AMD products and solutions. Prior to joining AMD, Dr. Su served as a Senior Vice President and General Manager, Networking and Multimedia at Freescale Semiconductor Inc., a semiconductor manufacturing company, and was responsible for global strategy, marketing, and engineering for the company's embedded communications and applications processor business. Dr. Su joined Freescale in 2007 as a Chief Technology Officer, where she led the company's technology roadmap and research and development efforts. Dr. Su spent the previous 13 years prior to Freescale at IBM in various engineering and business leadership positions, including Vice President of Semiconductor Research and Development Center responsible for the strategic direction of IBM Silicon Technologies, joint development alliances, and semiconductor R&D operations. Prior to IBM, she was a member of the technical staff at Texas Instruments in the Semiconductor Processing and Device Center from 1994 to 1995. Dr. Su has a bachelor's, master's, and a doctorate degrees in electrical engineering from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. She has published more than 40 technical articles and was named a Fellow of the Institute of Electronics and Electrical Engineers in 2009. In 2018, Dr. Su was elected to the National Academy of Engineering and was named Business Person of the Year by Fortune magazine and received the prestigious Dr. Morris Chang Exemplary Leadership Award. In 2019, Dr. Su was named one of the world's 50 best CEOs by Barron's, one of the most powerful women in business by Fortune magazine, and she was included in the Bloomberg 50 list of the people who defined the year. In 2020, Dr. Su was elected to the American Academy of Arts and Science. Dr. Su serves on the board of directors of Cisco Inc. and the U.S. Semiconductor Industry Association, as well as the chair of the board of directors of the Global Semiconductor Alliance. The CEO appears to be strong and well experienced. Since Dr. Lisa Su became the CEO, the stock price went from $3.35 to an all-time high of $69.40 the last trading day. That's 1,971% or 19.7 times return in 6 years. That is very impressive. She turned around the company, making it one of the leaders in the semiconductor industry. I would continue to trust her unless I see any issues. Let's look at the industry outlook. Per Fortune Business Insights, the global semiconductor market is projected to reach USD 730.29 billion by 2026, exhibiting a compound annual growth rate of 5.2% during the forecasted period. The increasing utilization and consumption of consumer electronic devices will fuel the demand for semiconductors during the forecasted period. Furthermore, the rising demand for the advanced semiconductor chips in the industrial application will contribute positively to semiconductor market growth in the forthcoming years. In addition, the penetration of smartphones will fuel demand for semiconductors, which will in turn boost the semiconductor market revenue. And more specifically, per Allied Market Research, looking at the graphic processing unit market, it is expected to grow to $200.85 billion by 2027, growing at a compound annual growth rate of 33.6% from 2020 to 2027. The integrated segment dominated the GPU market share in 2019 and is expected to continue the trend during the forecasted period, as integrated GPUs find extensive utilization in portable electronic devices such as smartphones, tablets, wearables, laptops, and many more. Also, the market is filled with research activities for developing integrated GPUs, which are capable enough to support high graphic processing in AI platforms, supercomputers, and VR systems. Also, per Allied Market Research, looking at the data center chip market, it is projected to reach $15.6 billion by 2025, registering a compound annual growth rate of 9.4% from 2018 to 2025. North America was the highest contributor to the global market, with $2.9 billion in 2017, and is expected to reach $5.5 billion by 2025, registering a compound annual growth rate of 8.3% during the forecasted period. The global data center chip market growth is driven by cloud computing and advancements in chip technology. In addition, government regulations regarding the localization of data centers fuel the market growth. Furthermore, increase in the smart computing devices is expected to present enormous opportunities for the market in the coming years. While looking at the semiconductor industry as a whole, the expected growth rate is only approximately 5.2% annually for the next several years. But looking at more specifically at the GPU and data center chips industry, it is expected to grow annually 33.6% and 8.3% respectively for the next several years. It appears that AMD will have the opportunity to benefit from the higher growth in the semiconductor industry. We can see here the size of the total addressable market and the opportunity for AMD. Data center has a total addressable market of $35 billion, PCs have a total addressable market of $32 billion, and gaming has a total addressable market of $12 billion, totaling $79 billion total addressable market. Let's look at some of the interesting facts about AMD. During 2020, AMD released a few new processors. Q1, they released their AMD Ryzen 4000 series mobile processors. Then in May 2020, they released their AMD Ryzen Pro 4000 processors. And then most recently, in July 2020, they released their AMD Ryzen Threadripper Pro. AMD has been able to capture market share of notebook units sold, more than doubling since 2017 with 7% to 2019 with 16%, and the number of AMD platforms increasing from 50 in 2018 to over 135 expected in 2020. With the momentum, their AMD commercial unit market share increased from 7% in 2017 to 11% in 2019, and the number of AMD platforms increased from 25 in 2018 to over 70 expected in 2020. These are pretty impressive growth numbers. Let's look at AMD's market share in terms of unit market share. Their client compute sector increased from 8.7% in 2017 to 16.9% in 2019, and in Q1 with a record quarter notebook revenue and on track to accelerate consumer and commercial mobile growth this year. Discrete graphics dropped from 33.1% in 2017 to stabilizing at around 26.6% in 2019. The x86 server growing from 1% in 2017 to 8% in 2019. Pretty impressive growth and market share for their client computing and x86 server sectors. Their second generation AMD EPYC processors has been adopted by several large tech companies like Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, IBM Cloud, and Oracle Cloud, which makes up the majority of the public cloud industry, as you can see here per Statista. Piers Harding-Rolls, research director at Ampere Analysis, predicts that the PS5 will far outsell Xbox Series X, with an estimated of 66 million units of the PS5 sold by end of 2024 compared to 37 million units of the Xbox Series X. But it doesn't really matter to AMD because their Zen 2 chip and the RDNA GPU chip will be in both consoles, so they'll benefit from the sales of either of the consoles that is expected to be released this year for the 2020 holidays. And per analyst from Tom's Hardware, he put both AMD and Intel CPU chips to test, and these were the results in conclusion. 10 aspects were tested, and AMD came out better in terms of CPU pricing and value, content creation productivity, specifications, power consumption, process node, architecture, and security. That's 7 out of the 10 aspects tested. And another analyst from Tom's Hardware put both AMD and NVIDIA's GPUs to test, and these are the results in conclusion. 5 aspects were tested, and NVIDIA came out with better in terms of feature technology, gaming performance, and power consumption, and the tie for drivers and software. So what happened on the last trading day that caused the AMD to go up 16.5% while the competitor Intel went down 16.24%? It's because of Intel on their most recent quarterly earnings announced on Thursday that its competing 7nm chip would be delayed by at least 6 months because of manufacturing issues, and that it may have to reach out to third-party manufacturers to produce their 7nm chips, which AMD already sells, because of a defect mode, pushing a possible release out to late 2022 or early 2023. Additionally, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, which manufactures chips for AMD and other chip designers, surged 9.7% to close at $73.90. It appears that investors believe that both AMD and Taiwan Semiconductor would benefit from Intel's issues with their 7nm chips. Let's look at some of the AMD's customers, which include some of the largest tech companies like Google, Amazon and their AWS, Microsoft and their Azure, Tencent Cloud, Baidu, and Oracle, to name a few. Let's look at some of the risks. The global health issue, if it continues, may adversely affect the business operations and financial results as a result of reduced operations or a disruption in their supply chain, which was experienced in the first quarter. AMD rely on third parties to manufacture the products, and if they are unable to do so on a timely basis, in sufficient quantities and using competitive technologies, AMD's business could be materially adversely affected. The success of AMD's business is dependent upon their ability to introduce products on a timely basis with features and performance levels that provide value to their customers, while supporting and coinciding with significant industry transitions. A great example of this problem was exhibited in Intel's delay in their 7nm chip that was discussed earlier. The loss of a significant customer may have a material adverse effect on AMD. AMD depends on a small number of customers for a substantial portion of their business, and it is expected that the small number of customers will continue to account for a significant part of the revenue. And if one of their key customers decide to stop purchasing their products, it can materially reduce the demand and adversely impact their business. Now let's look at the quantitative analysis. What we see here is the last 3 years of performance. We can see revenues has been growing from $5.3 billion in 2017 to $6.7 billion in 2019. Growth has slowed a bit in 2019. Gross margin has improved significantly from 34% in 2017 to 43% in 2019, which led to EPS increase from loss of 3 cents in 2017 to 30 cents in 2019, a huge improvement. We can see here that AMD has significantly reduced their debt from $1.7 billion or 4.6 times trailing 12 months adjusted EBITDA in 2017 to only $563 million or 0.5 times trailing 12 months adjusted EBITDA. We can also see that the cash available is $1.5 billion, which is more than the total debt of $563 million, so it suggests that AMD's balance sheet is strong. Into the next 5 years, AMD is projecting approximately growth of 20% compound annual growth rate, over 50% gross margins. Right now it's approximately 46% in the most recent quarterly earnings, operating margin of mid-20s%, and free cash flow margin of more than 15%. These are pretty good projections for AMD, and I hope they can achieve these projections. Let's look at the most recent quarter highlights. Revenue was $1.79 billion, up 40% year over year, primarily driven by higher computing and graphics segment revenue. Gross margin was 46%, up 5% points year over year, primarily driven by Ryzen and EPYC processor sales. Operating income was $177 million compared to operating income of $38 million a year ago. Operating income improved year over year, primarily driven by revenue growth and greater percentage of Ryzen and EPYC processor sales. Net income was $162 million compared to net income of $16 million a year ago. Diluted earnings per share was 14 cents compared to diluted earnings per share of 1 cent a year ago. Cash and cash equivalents and marketable securities were $1.4 billion at the end of the quarter. Looking at their segments individually, their computing and graphics segment in Q1 2020 increased to $1.4 billion, 73% year-over-year increase, driven by strong Ryzen processor and radio product channel sales. Compared to their enterprise, embedded, and semi-custom segment, where it was down 21% year-over-year, primarily due to the lower semi-custom sales partially offset by higher EPYC processor sales. The drop in their semi-custom segment likely largely due to the delaying of consumers purchasing consoles, waiting for the Sony's PS5 and Microsoft's Xbox Series X coming out later this year. So I would expect an increase over the next few quarters as Sony and Microsoft prepare to launch their highly anticipated consoles. As mentioned earlier, they have about $1.4 billion of cash and cash equivalents as of Q1 2020, with only $563 million of total debt, enough cash to pay off all of the debt. For the second quarter of 2020, AMD expects revenue to be approximately $1.85 billion, plus or minus $100 million, an increase of approximately 21% year over year. The year-over-year increase is expected to be primarily driven by growth of Ryzen and EPYC processor sales. AMD expects gross margin to be approximately 44% in the second quarter of 2020. Despite the expectations of weaker global health issue-related consumer demand in the second half of this year, AMD expects 2020 revenue to grow by approximately 25% plus or minus 5 percentage points compared to 2019, and gross margin to be approximately 45%. These projections by AMD is reasonable and is in line with analyst expectations. We can see here that the expectation for EPS for Q2 is 16 cents, a double from a year ago, and the expectation for EPS for the full year of 2020 is $1.03, an increase of 60% from a year ago. Let's look at some of the valuations compared to competitors. The market cap for Qualcomm is $100 billion, Nvidia is $250.8 billion, Intel is $214.2 billion, and ADM is $81.3 billion, the smallest in the group. Looking at the current price to earnings ratio and price to sales ratio, AMD appears to be expensive, but AMD has the second best growth rate projection. The better metric to use to compare would be the PEG ratio and the price to sales to growth ratio. AMD's PEG ratio is 1.78 in the middle of the group, but please do note that Intel's PEG ratio has not been updated with the impact of the delay in their 7nm chip. And looking at the price to sales to growth ratio, AMD is with 34.1, which is the second to Qualcomm's 21.1. AMD's profit margin, operating margin, return on assets, and return on equity is the worst amongst the group, even if AMD achieves their projection to reaching 25% operating margin. The two companies that has the highest dividend yield has the most net debt as a percentage of market cap. Although AMD doesn't pay a dividend, but it does have the second best balance sheet amongst the group. Looking at the stock price has gone up 33% in the last month, 23% in the last 3 months, 106% in the last year, and 4,055% in the last 5 years. And during this period, the company was led by current president and CEO Dr. Lisa Su. This is very impressive. Looking at analyst recommendations, there are currently 5 strong buys, 6 buys, 15 hold, 4 underperform, and 1 sell, with an average rating of a buy. Then the price target is between $8 and $71, with an average price of $54.57. The price of the share currently sits at $69.40. Conclusion. In my opinion, at today's price of $69.40, I think it is a buy if you have a longer term horizon. And if you do not have a position, I would suggest averaging in a position slowly because of the following reasons. Strong management team led by President and CEO Dr. Lisa Su, who is a knowledgeable and experienced CEO. Under her leadership, the stock price went up over 1,900%. AMD is in the data center, chip, and GPU industry that is expected to grow 9.4% and 33.6% respectively annually for the next several years. So the opportunity would be there for AMD to grow. AMD has amazing realistic projections and is set to grow faster than the industry, suggesting that it will take market share from other competitors. AMD has comparable performance CPU chips with leaders like Intel that are affordable and provide great content creation and productivity, specifications, power consumption, architecture, and security. AMD's chips in PCs, gaming, and data center has attracted many large organizations, and they include Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Tencent, Oracle, Samsung, HP, Cisco, Dell, to name a few. AMD has reasonable PEG and price to sales to growth ratios with a strong balance sheet compared to competitors. But I do have some concerns, and they are as follow. The global health issue, if it continues, may adversely affect the business operations and the financial results as a result of reduced operations or its disruption in their supply chain, which was experienced in their first quarter. The growth potential looks very promising, but remind you that these projections are only estimates and they can be very different from reality. AMD relies on third parties to manufacture the products, and if they are unable to do so on a timely basis in sufficient quantities and using competitive technologies, AMD's business could be materially adversely affected. The success of AMD's business is dependent upon their ability to introduce products on a timely basis with features and performance levels that provide value to the customers while supporting and coinciding with significant industry transitions. A great example of this problem was exhibited in Intel's delay in their 7nm chip, which was discussed earlier. The loss of a significant customer may have a material adverse effect on AMD. AMD depends on a small number of customers for a substantial portion of their business, and it is expected that the small number of customers will continue to account for a significant part of their revenue. And if one of their key customers decide to stop purchasing their products, it can materially reduce its demand and adversely impact the business. Disclosure: I currently do own some shares of AMD. I do not intend on buying any shares in the near future unless there's a significant pullback. Congratulations to those who were able to get in a low price, because I think this is an amazing company and I think it should be able to continue to grow under the leadership of Dr. Lisa Su. That's it for now. I spent a lot of time preparing for these videos, so I really appreciate if you could like and share my video. And if you do not want to miss out on any future video, please do subscribe and click the bell notification. Thank you for watching. Until then, see you next time.